Hello, hello, friends. Thank you for tuning into the Odd Thoughts podcast. At the Odd Thoughts podcast, we like to talk about the everyday odd thoughts, have conversations on relatable topics, and discuss whatever comes to mind. My name is Gunther, and I am your host. Welcome to episode 33. For episode 33, I started off by talking about some Christmas horror films. Now, during the Christmas season, I don't necessarily think of horror movies, but nonetheless, there are some pretty amazing movies that have come out around the holiday season and a couple cheesy ones. Then I transitioned into talking a little bit about positive reinforcement. I think sometimes everybody deserves a little reassurance in our lives. Just a little bit of that knowing that the good behaviors and the positive things we're doing are working out for us. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about refurbishing furniture or just repurposing like old items, around the house. One day I would love to have enough space to fill my house up or wherever I live with just an amazing eclectic collection of whatever. And then I ended it on talking a little bit about selflessness. Sometimes there is an empathy that we might feel for other people, and when you extend yourself and put others before you, you got to realize that you're just doing it because sometimes people need a little bit of that help, and it is an unwarranted thing at times. So if you want to listen to any of these topics, please tune in. I appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully you enjoy. How's everybody doing though? I hope everybody's doing okay. We're at the start of December and we're getting into the Christmas season and towards the end of 2023, and I hope everybody's doing amazing and hope that 2024 is one of your best years ever. Extending yourself to help others is a selfless thing to do. Just, putting someone before you, negating your own situation to care for them is a very unwarranted thing. You're just doing it because sometimes people, humans, need that little extra push. When you are selfless, you are not really worrying about yourself. You're just putting out generosity, like I said, in the understanding that people need that sometimes. There is a certain empathy we might understand with people in accordance to others, right? Letting others know that they are not alone is an important thing. Acknowledging that there is a collective struggle that we might all face is pretty important, and we all face it in our own ways. Reassurance can help push yourself through certain aspects of your life, and we just need that little motivation in our day to day. We need to also realize that sometimes putting others first is a human good that is supernatural. And when you're not always complete yourself, but some people are a little less complete. And if you can offer a little bit of sympathy and offer a little bit of reassurance to someone, that may help out a lot. Just as you maybe would wish that when you're at a certain point in your life that you'd hope for the same. But I love everybody for stopping by nonetheless. Just remember that you're important and that you're worth it. I'm doing okay though. I'm glad to get in December, getting to the end of the year a little bit. I've been working on trying to get ahead on my podcasts a bit, and as we kind of ramp up into further episodes into the holidays, I'll have more Christmas themed things, topics. In this episode, I only have like the Christmas horror films things, so I'm just keeping it minimal for right now, just keeping it kind of simple for right now. But as I get further into the month, I'll have more Christmas themed things. I always feel like around like certain holidays, I wanna just be more themed around those holidays. I think it's kind of fun, and Christmas is an important holiday for a lot of people and a lot of people's favorites. So why not lead into it a little bit? Why not lead into the cheery happiness, a little the merry Christmasness? I love Christmas and I appreciate winter in general, but I do love the holiday season. It brings around a lot of different vibes, and I'm just trying to make sure that I'm doing my best to really portray that in my future episodes coming up. These next couple, like this one and like my next episode on which will be on Thursday. Those will, like I said, be a little more minimal in the holiday cheer, but nonetheless, we'll work our way into it. And I'm just hoping that for 2024, I find something new to do. And I only want to make this podcast like I want to be able to get ahead on this podcast so that I'm just like this is it's just a second thought for me, and that I can always get ahead on something else. And as I know other people, have resolutions, I'll in one of my future episodes closer to New Year's, I'll have a topic where I'll talk about my New Year's resolutions. But I know everybody wants a good start to the year and a good end to the year, so just like everybody else, I'm hoping for the same. But let's move on, okay? Episode 33 come your way. Thank you for tuning in. Let's hop into the episode. When I think of Christmas movies, I tend to picture a pretty wholesome film. Usually something involving, winter traditions, maybe some family camaraderie, and, all the other great things that the holidays kind of bring. But sometimes there comes along a film that puts all those ideas to the side. More films really hold no limit when it comes to what time of year scary things can take place. And during the holiday season, I don't think about watching horror movies, but undoubtedly during the Christmas season, there's some good horror movies that may come out, or some that take place during the Christmas season. So I thought it was kind of interesting to maybe think of a few, or at least I was kind of thinking of a few, and I kind of put together my own little list of a few kind of good horror movies that are themed around Christmas. I threw in like three good ones, kind of, and then I threw three good ones in my opinion, and then I threw in like a couple bad ones, or like four good ones and then a couple bad ones, just to have a little fun with it. But first one that I kind of thought of that really sticks out to me is Black Christmas. Black Christmas is considered like kind of the first like slasher movie, really. It came out before Halloween, so it was, before it was, Halloween kind of led the slasher genre, but it came out before us. So, and it's a pretty good movie. It's pretty spooky. It's very low key. It's literally a sorority house. There's a bunch of girls in a sorority house that a stranger kind of creeps into the house and makes like mysterious, creepy phone calls, and eventually kind of stalks each one by one inside the house and kills them. And it's a pretty good movie. It's literally, I think, a good slasher. It's not as like the flashy '80s style. It's an early slasher movie, but it's kind of cool. I love the setting of kind of that more, smaller sorority house, and someone sneaks in, and the creepy phone calls, which is like kind of like an urban legend, right? Is like the stranger in the attic making phone calls, and so it's a pretty good movie. And at least in my opinion, it's a good movie. And they also happen to have remade the movie a couple times, which you could say whatever about the remakes, but there was a remake that came out in 2006 that kind of gives a little bit of more of the background of the killer, from like, because the killer in Black Christmas is a kid, is someone named Billy, whoever he is. And so in the 2006 remake, they kind of give like more of a background on Billy the killer. I think something happens to like his mom or something like that. I can't remember the movie very specifically. I honestly try to, you know, take it out of my mind. The original Black Christmas had like great actors like, Margot Kidder and John Saxon, and in the remake 2006 remake kind of does the same thing, at least with popular names. It kind of still does that same thing. Michelle Trachtenberg, or Berg, sorry, and then Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Oliver Hudson, Kate Hudson's brother. So few good actors. But it's a pretty like soulless kind of remake. Kind of what a lot of those remakes in the early 2000s, mid 2000s kind of came out to be. So pretty par for the course, but I don't think, I'm really expecting a whole lot of quality in certain slashers, especially with remakes. And then a few years ago in 2019, they remade it again. But it's kind of like I kind of don't even consider it really a remake, maybe even, because it kind of changes the story a little bit, but it's still a bunch of sorority girls kind of being hunted down, except instead of one killer, it's a bunch of killers. It's like a fraternity of guys, and I'm not always a big fan of like the sexes, boys and girls being pinned against each other in like any sense. But in like a horror movie, in this sense, it really worked out. It was pretty good. And I would say this remake is it could have been just called anything else, and it would have been fine. But I think when you kind of call it Black Christmas, when you make it like seem like it's a remake, it kind of puts a whole like kind of damper on it, or like it puts maybe a certain expectation on that movie. But it's a good movie. It's like I said, it's loosely based about the same thing. It's still a house. It's a sorority, but this time around, it's more of a like a revenge on these on this fraternity and like some of the sick people, like guys that went to this fraternity that took advantage of like a couple of the girls from the sorority. And so I do like that sense of kind of like empowerment, and they don't make the guys seem like just like trash. They don't make men seem necessarily trash. You know what I'm saying? The fraternity's like cursed by some like the piss by a spirit of like one of the old like members of the university. So it and like there's a statue of the head, like the head bust that sits in the fraternity that like oozes black goo that like transforms people into like men into misogynistic, hating whatever things. So it's kind of it's funny. It's kind of funny in that way, but it's a good movie. I think it's it's way better than the 2006 remake, and I would say it's you can consider it not even a remake necessarily. But I would say Black Christmas, whatever version you watch, those are pretty solid like horror Christmas movies. They don't play necessarily super into the Christmas themes, but they do take place around the holidays. Next on my list, I put down a movie that definitely 100% plays into the tropes of Christmas, and it's Silent Night, Deadly Night. It came out in 1984, and that movie's pretty ridiculous. It's a slasher movie. It's a horror movie, a slasher film. What do you expect really sometimes from some of these, especially when it's like trying to hone in on like the holiday thing? And so it's about literally the movie starts with a little kid and a kid like a baby, his baby brother. The kid's name is Billy. The baby brother's name is Ricky, and they're in a car with their parents. And their parents end up getting robbed by a guy in a Santa Claus costume, and the guy kills their parents, and it kind of puts like a image in Billy's head. But eventually they like get into an orphanage after the parents die, and the orphanage is like kind of rough and kind of a traumatic experience growing up. But he kind of still had Billy specifically, is still haunted by these like visions of Santa. And years later, I think yeah, so years later when he's 18, he gets a job at a department store, a toy store, sorry, more so. And he's like, just being a normal kid trying to make his way in the world, and right around Christmas time, the store does like an in-store Santa thing, and the in-store Santa doesn't show up, so they force Billy to be the in-store Santa, and of course he hasn't disclosed who he is in his past, so he like puts the Santa Claus costume on and like immediately flips into like a rampage, and so then he just goes off on killing everybody. And then, but he like kills a bunch of random people. He goes back to the orphanage that he grew up in, where his brother still is, Ricky, and he wants to take revenge basically on like the orphanage for them being shitty to him. It's like it's like there's like nuns control the orphanage too, and so he wants to like take revenge on the main woman, the mother superior. But then the cops like end up shooting him, and he has a pretty good. He says, "You're safe now. Santa Claus is gone." Pretty good line. But then Ricky, obviously his brother, sees it, and then the movie kind of I think fades out with him saying, pointing at Mother Superior and saying like naughty, real soft or whatever. And so it's pretty, it really lays into that Christmas time. Like, of course he has to be dressed up as Santa, and of course he works at a department store, and It's pretty, but a decent little backstory about this kind of traumaticness, about kind of experiencing this thing. And if you were 5 years old and you saw a person dressed as Santa Claus, doing something to your parents, killing your parents, like probably would put a certain, damper on your vision of what Santa Claus is. Also, I think I left out. I think right before the parents get like robbed and killed, they go to visit like the grandpa, and he like scares them and tells them about Santa Clauses. You should be scared of Santa Claus, and so it kind of just sets everything up in this young kid's mind. Really messes him up before he even gets a chance to really do anything. But like, of course, like the circumstances lead to him like having to like dress up as Santa Claus at his job, and of course that's what sets him off. But they made a few different parts of Silent Night, Deadly Night, but I wanted to highlight kind of part two a little bit because part two is it involves Ricky. Part two and part three does, but part two is kind of like a cult classic, if you will. Um, the movie basically it's funny that the movie starts out with basically feels like 30 minutes of just flashbacks of the first movie. But Ricky, the younger brother, is in a mental hospital, and he's there because he had committed his own murders. And so he's kind of having like a flashback of the stuff from the first movie, and then kind of what happened after after Billy died, and he kind of like went on to do whatever he did. So apparently, like Ricky got adopted eventually, and he had a pretty good upbringing, but temptation kind of set there, and he still thinks about his brother kind of going on this murderous rampage or whatever. And then Ricky's adoptive father dies. And that like I guess like just turns him loose basically. And he just like kills whoever, specifically kills people he views as naughty. Oh god. But eventually he kills a few people, he has a standoff with police, and he gets sent to the mental hospital, and then like he's telling the story, and then it kicks off like the second part of the movie where he like kills his doctor, finds like a Salvation Army Santa Claus and dresses up as Santa Claus and goes on like a further murderous rampage. He, eventually going back to the orphanage to try to finish the job that Billy, his brother, didn't, and he does. I'm pretty sure like Ricky kills Mother Superior, like chops her head off or whatever. Just holidays, a great holiday spirit, movie. Jesus. And then he gets shot by police, but then like he survives being shot, and then I don't remember the third part three, and then like there's like five other parts after that, and they don't have to they don't involve Billy, Ricky, any of that. But really, those first two Silent Night, Deadly Nights are kind of like I said, these kind of cult classics, if you will. And I think I mean, like, they're just plain old slashers. They really lean into like the Christmas holiday vibe. Whereas like Black Christmas is just kind of a slasher movie that happens to be around the holidays. But, Silent Night, Deadly Night is like directly affected by, Christmas and Santa Claus and whatever else. But next on the list, I actually genuinely think is like a pretty great movie. Also another movie that's not necessarily like on Christmas, but plays with the holiday themes kind of. But it's called Better Watch Out. It came out in 2016, and I think it's a pretty fantastic movie. It's about this kid, this teenage boy. His name's Luke, and he's getting babysat by his babysitter who's like 5 years older than him, and her name's Ashley. And he like has a thing for Ashley, and he's like trying to he has like this whole plan to try to like seduce Ashley. So like Ashley comes over, they watch like a horror movie, and he like he like grabs alcohol, I think, tries drinking some, and it goes for like a kiss basically, and Ashley just turns him down. And generally like turns him down in a good way, right? And he's a little offended, he's like, why can't it just like why not? Like it's like because you're like 12 years old, you know what I'm saying? But she lets him down pretty easily. But then like Luke's friend Garrett, who like you kind of see in the beginning of the movie a little bit, like comes over and he's there or whatever, and they're all like chilling at the house, and then all of a sudden like brick comes through the window, and it has like a mysterious message on it, and Garrett like freaks out and he runs outside, and he gets like shot, and Ashley and Luke sees him get shot, and they're like, "Oh my God!" And Ashley and Luke go into hiding up in Luke's room, and they're like hiding in the closet, and all of a sudden, like a masked gunman like comes in and searching around, and Ashley like kind of looks at the gunman and notices that he recognizes the masks. And the height is kind of like the same as Garrett. So she like pops out of like the closet or whatever and unmasks the guy, and it's Garrett with a mask. And basically Luke kind of has like I said, he had this whole idea to make him seem like, this macho tough, get with Ashley type thing. And it obviously backfires, and Ashley like goes storming off, but all of a sudden Luke takes it too far, and he like knocks Ashley out and ends up tying her up and texts like her boyfriend to come over and say like, hey, like, da 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 da, I need you to like help me out or yada whatever. And so like the boyfriend comes over, and they end up like of knocking him out. I forget how. I think I don't know if they knock him out actually. I think Luke tries to knock him out, but then Garrett like threatens him with like the gun or whatever. And so they tie him up. And then they basically just like cycle, I mean like messed up, like Luke is like this twisted kid, and he like threatens them. He's like threatening them, and he sets up like a Home Alone trap, the paint can thing, and there's like a whole argument that him and Garrett had about whether it'd work or not, and so they set it up on Ashley's boyfriend Ricky, I think is his name, yeah, Ricky, yeah, and they set up the paint can and they let the paint can go, and it like smashes Ricky's head, so now Ricky's dead, and Ashley eventually gets like free somehow, but then gets knocked out again, and so Luke furthering with this plan, like everything doesn't seem like it literally he thinks he's so in control the whole time. He's such a smug kid, and Garrett's kind of freaking out, and Garrett doesn't want to be a part of it anymore, but Luke's very much so like, let's like, you have to do this, like we have to do this. And so he furthers his plan by texting Ashley's ex-boyfriend Jeremy, and basically kind of trying to paint it to where it's going to be like a murder suicide thing where they're going to kill Ashley and they're going to kill Jeremy and make it seem like he like killed himself and killed Ashley and tried to kill Luke and Garrett. And so it's he think Luke thinks he has a plan. But all of a sudden Garrett has like a change in heart and tries to help Ashley like leave, like tries to help her escape. And then Luke kills Garrett. And that's a pretty unfortunate thing, honestly. And I think Jeremy ends up dying because he gets like hung because that's how they were gonna try to frame it. Yeah, I think that yeah, yeah. And then so he like kills Garrett, he like stabs Ashley thinking that he's gonna kill Ashley, and like she's bleeding out. He like runs upstairs to like frame himself as he was just sleeping this whole time and didn't know, and he da 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 dude. And then like the parents come home and they see the massacre, and they come running upstairs. The mom comes running upstairs to Luke, and there's like a second of comfort, and then all of a sudden you hear like, we got one alive type thing, and Ashley's alive, dude. And there's like a scene when she's like getting pulled out on the gurney, and she like flips off Luke in a pretty perfect poetic way to end that. But I think that is a genuinely good movie. Not super like a Christmas movie, but around the holidays movie. And very twisted kind of psychological thing. Like like Luke and Garrett, like their whole like you see their interaction before Ashley gets there, and they're like Garrett's talking about like smoking weed and like taking pills or whatever, and like it's like these kids are supposed to be like 13 years old or whatever, and so they're like shitheads. So you really don't like these kids right off the bat, and Ashley's just a badass the whole time. She like really trying to like she's like making fun of Luke and trying to threaten him, and like I don't care, like do it, little boy, like so it's very much so like she's just sticking the middle finger up the whole time to him, and it's very satisfying when at the end when she's like alive and gives him the middle finger out, when she's going to the ambulance. But a great movie. And I think everybody should watch it. It's 2016. It feels like kind of just it's not like a big time budget, right? It's kind of low key. It has a few big names in it, kind of really. Who is it? Livia DeJong or whatever her name is. Yeah, and then Dacre Montgomery, who is in Stranger Things, right? Patrick Warburton, Virginia Madsen, they play the parents. So it's got a few people. And I think it's a great movie. It's like I said, not a strictly Christmas movie, but around the holidays. Um, thought I had one more, I guess. I was tripping myself up. I thought I had four. I do have three. I think I was gonna put Gremlins on the list, but that's kind of a you can if it's horror adjacent, yeah, da, da, da. It's a little iffy. But I did put a couple. I'll make sure to just go quick through these movies. I'm not gonna give much light to these movies. But I remember when I was a kid growing up, one of my favorite movies was a movie called Jack Frost. It came out in 1998. It has like Michael Keaton, Kelly Preston, and it's Michael Keaton's like a musician who gets in a car accident, but his soul gets transferred into a snowman that's like wearing his hat and like scarf, or whatever. It's a great movie, very wholesome, very heartwarming. But the year before that, there was a horror movie that came out called Jack Frost, and it's literally about a serial killer whose name is Jack Frost, who's caught after all these years. He's getting transported to execution, and the vehicle ends up crashing, and it crashes into like a chemical truck, and it like dissolves Jack, and he like dissolves into the snow and becomes a killer snowman. Not much else to it, but I remember seeing like the case inside Blockbuster or whatever, and it was like the scary snowman thing, but just think how many people tried to like check out the Jack Frost with Michael Keaton and got the Jack Frost with the stupid killer snowman. Just like I said, one of those very B movie slashers. Not a lot of substance, but still fun to watch. It really is. And then I had another one called Santa's Sleigh. Pretty perfect title. None, if you ask me, that one came out in 2005. It's starring Bill Goldberg, who's a wrestler or was a wrestler at one time. And that movie's about Santa Claus. Apparently, like Santa Claus was. It's like they make up a false legend of Santa Claus that he was born from a virgin birth, and it was because of Satan. And originally, Santa Claus was. It was the day of slaying. It wasn't Christmas. Wasn't fun. It was for killing. And Santa Claus like was killing all these people, and then one day an angel like challenged him to a curling match, I think it was, and beats Santa Claus. So he's destined for 1,000 years to be nice, and so from 1005 AD to 2005, he has to be good. But 2005 hits and time's up, so he's just like massacring people for no reason because it's the day of slaying. It's not for fun. But I'm not less like I said, I don't necessarily look for horror movies during the holiday season. It's not what I envision for Christmas movies or holiday movies, but sometimes, you throw a little left field kind of choice out there, and some of these movies are generally pretty great movies, and you don't have to wait to the holidays to watch them, and I think it's fun when you get a little bit of that difference in films. And I'm gonna choose to usually watch the wholesome, Christmas movies, the kind of good ones. I'll talk about those in a future episode here, but I love watching Christmas horror films nonetheless. A little reassurance in our lives is sometimes pretty important. Positive reinforcement can push us through the flux in our every day-to-day lives. Being told some positive affirmations, receiving an award for something, or just generally seeing your efforts pay off is sometimes just that little bit of extra motivation we need. Maybe when you're at a certain low point in your life, positive reassurance pulls you right along into better times. It's not necessarily guaranteed though, but if you have a certain susceptibility, maybe that allows it to affect you a little bit better. But, positive reinforcements are just these reinforcements that we have to encourage a continuation in positive nature in some of the good behaviors that we do. Usually, if something is like more of a positive reinforcement, you want to associate it with something good that's going on or something that you're doing positively, right? Or, reassuring someone that they are doing positive things, that the things that the steps that they're taking at certain aspects of their life are genuinely working out. I think sometimes it's important to acknowledge positives. You need to know that the things that you're doing are working out. it's not something that I think we can always, look at, right? Or that we're always very prevalent to. We just sometimes push ourselves through these days, right? And sometimes we just don't know if we're doing all right, or we don't know necessarily if we're pushing in the right path in whatever aspect it is. If it's just like literally normal day life, or at your job, or in relationships. So having that kind of, to acknowledge these positives and have these kind of these little reassurances, it helps you. It's something that I think we do need to know sometimes. Sometimes we can let ourselves know too, right? I think you can sometimes feel so good about doing things and how you handle situations, but like I said, it's not always very prevalent, or it's not always readily available to us, these certain reassurances. Sometimes, I don't know what deserving or not deserving necessarily means even, right? I feel that you need some reinforcement. You deserve reinforcement as a human. Obviously, when you're doing these more poor choices in life, or you're got some bad behaviors and you're not doing the right things, then maybe not. Yeah, maybe to a certain, maybe more so to a certain extent. You don't want to necessarily shit on someone when they're at a low point. Excuse me for my language, but you also don't want someone to who's purposely acting bad, or purposely feeding into certain negatives. You don't want to give them reassurance, then it's not helping them, right? But sometimes maybe that's something that people are kind of looking for a little bit. Sometimes you need some of that reassurance, right? So in that way, maybe we're a little deserving. And I think especially when you are kind of taking the right steps, and you're only trying to have like a good nature to yourself and how you act and how you're kind of doing things in your life. So I think that reassurance can help. It's not necessarily a thing that maybe pushes you completely through in a physical sense, where it's going to be the one thing that helps, but like I said, a certain susceptibility sometimes can really help out. And I mean, there's definitely different reinforcers, right? Different natural reinforcers. I think like we always think of, we mostly think of like words of affirmation first, right? I think sometimes in that social aspect, when people are physically kind of coming up to you and telling you that you are doing a good job, or hey, you are making the right choices, and the things are that you are doing do matter. I think that's more so sometimes the, positive reinforcement we think of, these, positive affirmations. But I mean, even in other ways, like in more of a, maybe a natural sense of just plain effort, when you're at a job or something, or you're trying to do a certain task, and you're putting in time and you're putting in all this energy to trying to be successful in something, to learn about something, to achieve something. When you see that progress eventually kind of pay off, or you kind of see these certain milestones pay off, I think that can be a really good reassurer, a reinforcer, if you will. And I mean, even at times there's kind of like the tangible ones. You know what I'm saying? You get paid for doing something, or you get rewarded by some physical object. A little money is always nice, right? Or getting receiving a gift from for doing work is, or putting an effort in something is awesome. I think, like I said, I think sometimes, especially with me more so, I think of more of these like these affirmations that people can give to you, that speak to you. That's when I think of positive reinforcement. So when you kind of look at these other things, when you think about, you put an effort and eventually it might pay off just through getting a task done and getting a little further along somewhere, or being rewarded with a physical object, a physical tangible thing. I think you start to realize that maybe there are better ways, or a lot of different ways more so, that you can feel good about yourself, and that you can see a little bit of that reassurance and kind of how you live in your life and how you're doing things. Positive reinforcement in different life aspects too, man. I just think about you, not just in just work and not just in your social life, but it's kind of it can be useful everywhere. I think of just knowing that you're doing a little bit of doing okay in a little bit of everything don't hurt. And obviously different, like when your social life, People aren't going to necessarily walk up to you and give you money for being a good person, right? It's, or you're going to be, given all these gifts because you're a good person. So, when people are kind to you and they show respect to you and they let you know how much they appreciate you, that can feel good. And then, when you're at work, sometimes like you're kind of putting in all this work and you work all these hours, and you don't necessarily want to hear just like, hey, good job, get a little pat on the back type thing. You want a little more money, right? You want that raise, you want something out of it. So sometimes they're in different life aspects, positive reinforcements can kind of look different. And I think another big thing is like you can always do it onto others too. There should never be this thing that you should, if you're being, positive to people and giving people reinforcement and reassurance, that you should never think about expecting it back necessarily. I'm always big on sometimes that certain kindnesses and certain acts are not reciprocated. I mean, you should be able to just give yourself without feeling anything warranted back. So, if you're looking for a positive reinforcement, though, you have to be willing, I think, to give it on to others. Because you know that people need it. I mean, you know that some people just are kind of stuck in, they kind of hit these certain low points in their life, and just as you do. So why not just let them know that things are kind of working out okay, and it doesn't look great right now, and the close picture doesn't look very fantastic, but down the line it may be very different for you or different for whoever. So like I said, just thinking about being it unwarranted too, right? So if you're giving that positive reassurance to people and you're helping others with that kind of letting them know that the good that they're doing is paying off, don't expect it back. You shouldn't be searching for it, right? You shouldn't be searching around for this positive affirmation all the time. That, you know, be doing things in your life and trying to take these positive steps and doing only good things because you're looking for some sort of, affirmation, that you're looking for recognition. I think we want a little bit, undoubtedly. We want a little bit of that in a sort of acceptance way, that we're being accepted in human existence properly, in a way, whatever our way is, however that makes sense. It's just, I think sometimes it's one of those things that when people let you know that what you're doing is a good thing, or the good behaviors, the positive steps that you're taking, it maybe helps you know that you're kind of living a similar life to a lot of the, people that you may look up to in a certain way, or that you look onto and you say, hey, why, how come they're kind of pushing through, and why are they doing so well in these certain aspects? So I think sometimes that can really help. And you should definitely appreciate it when it happens, right? I think I'm always very thankful when people, kind of come up to me and they tell me, I'm doing a good job, or, they're thankful for me, or, I get a little extra something, a little extra monetary, a little money, a little bit of, a gift for something. I always appreciate that stuff. So, and I know, like I said, I know it's just not always going to be around, and I'm not always going to see it too, right? I'm not going to, people aren't always going to be around to come clap for me when I'm doing something. So, when it does happen, I gotta appreciate it. And I think sometimes even like when I give it out to others, right? When I am, giving these positive reinforcements and, positive reassurances to others, that it kind of helps me too. As I know that I'm being nice to people, not wanting it back necessarily, that I kind of have this sense of hope that people are kind of genuinely wishing it on me. And if I can kind of give that motivation to someone else, then why can't I give that motivation to me? So, I mean, a little reassurance in life is pretty, I think, important at times. It's not always going to be there necessarily. These positive reinforcements aren't always going to be there, but when you do have that kind of positive reassurance, and when you have this positive nature to your good behaviors, and you're somewhat rewarded for it, I think it's a pretty amazing thing, and it can definitely push you through some stuck moments or get you out of some low points in your life. One day, I would love to have enough space to fill with all sorts of like eclectic furniture items, or just like random antique items. I sometimes shudder at the thought of having to spend a lot of money filling up spaces like a home of whatever type. So I kind of love to think about ways to save as much money as possible to form a large collection, form a eclectic collection. And there are ways to achieve my vision, I think. One of them I really truly love is refurbishing items, refurbishing furniture, refurbishing just anything. Turning items that I find that maybe no longer have a certain use, no longer forgotten or whatever, and discover something new for it. Finding awesome ways to kind of bring things back to life. I love thinking about the kind of newer trend of upcycling furniture, right? I think when it comes to upcycling, that's more so like when you sell it, you're kind of repurposing it and turning it into something more. But just generally like refurbishing furniture more so. Think about how amazing that can be. Not just in like big items like beds or like couches or something like that, but you know, bookcases, shelves, tables, just little things, even just these crazy vintage items, wall items and things you can hang up on whatever. I just have a lot of fun with that. I always kind of think about like my future, home and my dream home just being filled out with just amazing items and spending my time just thrifting for things. And I really kind of get it from my dad in the sense that he loves looking for old things and, finding a new purpose for that kind of stuff, or at least like bringing a purpose back to it. And I love that idea of just transforming something old into something new. I read somewhere that I didn't read a specific number, but there's tons of furniture that gets thrown away just in landfills every year, right? That people just kind of disregard. And you could always make that argument that some things are unusable when they get thrown away or they're cheaply made and they really just don't have like anything to them. But, someone's trash is another person's treasure type thing, right? I kind of love thinking about the idea of just coming along and even not even just like finding super old antique things, just things that maybe just nobody wants and finding a new way to use it, making a couch like look different and transforming tables into and adding things. I always like I'm not an inventive person sometimes. I sometimes get a little stalled in that way, but so when I kind of try to hone in on this idea of refurbishing, kind of opens that side of me, this kind of inventive side in the way of, what can I add to furniture or take away to make it a new thing, to make it to a different purpose. And I don't have money right now. I don't have a lot of money. So I want to put myself if maybe one day when I get in that place of, I got some money to me and I got a few extra dollars, why not just invest on a little bit of that stuff? More so in like the materials to help transform, discarded items. Redefining a purpose, finding a new purpose for things. All right, I think that could even lead me into think like creating my own items just from scratch. Get into woodworking myself, but maybe refurbishing furniture and refurbishing certain items around the house can kind of get me into that lane. It gets me a little excited. I do a little bit of carpentry with these things, so it kind of feeds into that want to learn that skill. I think it's a useful thing to be kind of like a useful carpenter nowadays, or at least have that kind of skill of, putting a few nails into a few things and cutting some things, measuring correctly. But it really is, I feel like kind of an old school thing, right? It's kind of risen in popularity now, at least maybe because social media is just how big it is and every trend kind of is more exposed. But it always feels like that's kind of always been an old school mentality of me, if something gets passed along to you, if someone has a piece of furniture or an item that they don't want, that they give it to someone else and they find a new purpose for it, or maybe they can bring life back into it, or maybe you own yourself like an item that kind of has been out of use for a while and you can somehow retransform it into something new, repurpose it. I feel like that's like a such a like it's been around forever. People have always been kind of inventive in that way, and it's only now I think sometimes in this kind of consumer-esque kind of society in a way that people want the newer things, and there's a certain look that people kind of come to. So when certain items don't fit that vibe or fit that view, it's just discarded and kind of thrown aside. And I don't think I can blame people necessarily because maybe they just don't always have that vision of what they can do with it or have time or it's just like there's nothing really they you can do with certain items or whatever. But I kind of also like I love the idea of upcycling and maybe using it as a side hustle. It's kind of one of these things where it feels like it's kind of a proper side hustle and I don't need to, find a $10 table and sell it for $200, right? But if I could find a $10 table and, throw some paint on it and add a couple things and sell it for $50 or whatever, that's fun to me. I think I would just really be doing it for myself, but I think maybe if I was good enough at it or kind of had a system where I got people involved with me to do that kind of thing, and then why not? That's kind of the any kind of side hustle, especially in this modern day with I always I'm scrolling through social medias and people are like, 10 side hustles to work from home, 2 hours a day. And it's like, I don't want to do those side hustles. Like I'd rather do things that I feel like I'm putting a little effort into and I'm kind of using like my creativity, using my mind to do. And I'm not trying to always make like as much money as a short amount of time as possible. I want my money to last. I want it to come when it matters, kind of thing. Maybe a little, maybe a little stupid to think, but fast money doesn't always seem that appealing to me. But I have no personal qualms with refurbished furniture too, like buying refurbished furniture. I definitely think it's a great idea. I think I have no problems with old stuff. I have, I'm not. I like I said, I don't want to spend a bunch of money filling up my future homes with new furniture. If I can bring things along and repurpose it, put do a little carpentry and make it new again, then I'm just gonna kind of do that. I kind of just want to keep doing that. And always just I love the idea that hopefully I get into a certain position in my life where I can kind of go thrifting for these hidden gems and these eclectic things. And I only think when I think about gaining a lot of more money in my life, I don't think about buying more expensive things. I just think about buying a lot of cheap things. That's my mindset more so. Just buy the cheap things and buy a lot of those. So just like I said, like if I had a little more money, like buying some paints and buying some tools and buying little things that can help with remaking making these old furniture items and old furniture items and old household items new again. Sorry, I get excited. I'm just worked up for refurbished furniture. I didn't know I was gonna have such a good time. But I'm always on that kind of thing of like it's someone else's trash could be your treasure, and maybe if you're driving down the road, you see that coffee table and you might be able to fit it into your back seat or something like that, or you got a friend with a truck, then take a chance on that thing. My sister and my dad, my older sister and my dad are very much so kind of similar in that mind that why not find that stuff, and if you don't want it, then why not give it to us? And especially my older sister, she's always been like that. If you don't want something, give it to me. I'll find a use for it. But I get excited thinking about, forming a large collection of just eclectic things and, finding a new purpose for things and refurbishing items and, making it something that I can really want and use. Sometimes we have a tendency to put others' needs and wishes before our own. We have a certain level of care that we might associate with others in our lives and we might associate with unknown people. Selflessness is an unrequited action that we bestow onto others without any consideration sometimes for what their situations really are. Purely just an extension of yourself to give others a chance on being helped in whatever their predicaments are. Expressing selflessness might even affect others to maybe do the same. Or you yourself are affected by selflessness to then be a person who puts others first. Concern for others' needs, in putting others before you is what selflessness is. You can't help but to have a little empathy for people sometimes. I think some people a little bit more empathetic than others, but we have, I think, a general empathy for others. And it doesn't always mean that we're going to necessarily put them first, but you can sometimes understand people's situations, realizing that you've been through a similar thing, or just having that whereabouts that something truly is wrong and someone just it can't do it themselves, and they have certain needs and certain wishes that they can't fulfill. And when you extend care and you extend that kind of selflessness, you're doing it purely just out of, just doing it. You're not expecting it back, or you shouldn't be expecting it back. But like I said, you just understand other people's plights. Extending yourself is something that is very much so involved in selflessness, right? Maybe even sometimes overextending yourself. You want to sometimes help people, especially if you have a certain level of care for them. And you don't ever want to see someone struggle. And as you don't want to struggle and you wish people don't see you struggle, right? So sometimes that empatheticness comes out and you just want to help and you want to extend yourself out. And I mean, sometimes you can be a pretty reliable person, right? Certain people are kind of just those super reliable people that it feels like they can always be that person people can count on. That even just through a basic extension of oneself, that they are most successful with helping others. But also just big time willingness. You got to realize that it's not just like asking if someone's okay, right? Or just saying, "Hey, you can do it." Sometimes really putting others first is you got to have a willingness to do it. You really got to understand that that means you're prioritizing someone else before you. And there should never be any expectations. You give to others and not expect anything back. That's the whole point of selflessness, is that you're doing it just because someone needs that extension. And as you wish that someone maybe would extend themselves to you at low points in your life, whether it happens or not, that you should be that person that sometimes do it. Like I said, you shouldn't be looking around expecting it to happen back to you, right? And it doesn't. I don't think there's like a big thing like selflessness is. There's waves to it. There's levels to it in ways, right? You're extending yourself to maybe only a certain extent. I don't think you should feel pressure to be, putting every single person you come into contact with or that walks past you in front of yourself, right? We only have so much we can give and only so much we can really handle. And I mean, it's kind of hard when you can't handle a lot of things in your own life. So sometimes the extent of which of your selflessness is may not be great as other people or as a great of a reach as others. But nonetheless, like if it's just intermediate relationships like your family or your girlfriend, boyfriend, friends, if that's kind of, who you extend it to, then I mean that's good enough. There's a certain noble act, right, to selflessness when you're putting other people first. You're kind of not thinking about their situation fully. In true selflessness, you're kind of just doing it, like I said, because someone needs help. Someone has these certain wishes in their life and they need a better place to be, or they just want a little bit better and a difference, and they just can't do it themselves necessarily. Some people are a little bit more of they can extend themselves a little bit more and are a little bit more willing to give out to others, to complete strangers. Maybe even just like helping their community or literally helping complete strangers. And I don't think that necessarily makes anybody a better, more caring or, more selfless person, right? Just because you help more people doesn't make you necessarily a better person. It's not about being better than other people, right? Whole point is like you just try to be as good of a person as you possibly can. And hopefully you extend a little kindness in the way of selflessness as you hopefully surround yourself with people that maybe would do the same for you. That's not a guaranteed thing though. But it's got to give a little bit of that motivation, right? I think, with a little bit of that selflessness when you kind of putting other people first, like hopefully you're not necessarily controlling every aspect of their life, right? Maybe you're just giving them a little bit of that push, right? Expressing to them that there is a certain goodness, or even in that way of like when you're doing a little self good, when you have a little bit of selflessness, that there's goodness in you. But the whole point is that, it's just purely generosity. Sometimes people just need a little bit of something. If you don't, and like I said, if when you put yourself out there, you're not necessarily thinking about people's, situation, and at times you're not thinking about how far you're going to extend on something. So sometimes it just takes a little push. Sometimes people just need a little care and just need a little warmth from someone else. And I feel like sometimes, like I said, an empathetic thing is to worry about other people's situations, right? And you worry about your own situations. So it's very natural sometimes to see other people in these struggles and the other people who just need that little extra. You can't help but to feel a little bit in your heart that you can maybe offer that to them. That maybe you are the type of person that actually has that generosity. I think there's a different realization to that. Don't force yourself to be a good person if you maybe just don't have what it takes to be a good person. I don't know necessarily yeah, I know good people in my life, and there's no specifically great example to what a good person is, or at least it varies from person to person. And when you extend yourself and you put others before you, sometimes like it's just purely that selflessness is a good act in its own right. That even just putting yourself out there to help others is noble in itself, but you can't help maybe to think that maybe you're not doing enough for others, or can I give and how can I express selflessness? I often think like, I try to be kind to people, right? And I try to have a little goodness in my heart, but I'm not always around people who need help necessarily. And maybe I'm not looking at people in this way, this view of, hey, they're helpless or they need something or they need someone. So I quite often question if I even have the ability to be generous, but I know that I have been, and I know that I have certain selflessness in me. So I don't worry necessarily about like any time that I extend myself in that way, that try to have a little goodness and try to put someone first, that not I just try not to worry about not doing enough, right? Just like I said, just that extending yourself is a good thing. And can I give? The question is like, can I give? The answer is yes. I think everybody has a little bit of something to give. Yeah, it's like I said, just sometimes your presence is that little bit of warmth that you can offer is great. You don't have to necessarily control everybody's aspect, right? You don't have to take someone's life and their problems or whatever, the things that they're going through, and you don't have to necessarily make everything right for them. If you can't do it on your own in that way, then don't push yourself to do it. It's and there's so many ways to express it too. I think like selflessness is, like I said, there's so many ways. Just being a little warm to someone. Maybe you have to push yourself out there. Maybe it does take some maybe larger sacrifices. Maybe it takes a little bit of money or opening up your home to someone or just doing a little extra that you didn't maybe necessarily see at first or that you were probably aware of maybe. You definitely should avoid fake selflessness though. Only when it's convenient type stuff, right? It's not a good way to look at being a person in this world who, like I said, objectively away from just good or bad, but you don't want to just be doing good for people because it's like convenient at that moment. You don't want to be good because it's like, oh, I've been kind of shitty, so maybe I should be good now. Sorry for my language. That's selflessness is always going to be putting others first. So if you can't commit to doing that every single time, then don't fake it. Don't be fake about it. Don't be a fake good person. Don't be a fake caring person. But like I said, have that realization that if you can give, then give a little bit. If you can't, then don't be fake about it. Like I said, selflessness is always going to be putting others first. And sometimes it's difficult. And, when you're not your complete self, that feel like sometimes you're overextending what you're doing. We're not always capable of everything in our life. So when you start to put other people first, that can maybe feel like you're negating your own life. That then you're kind of pushing stuff aside because you're only feeling better about your own life because you're helping others. And that could be a quick, big question. But I think just doing a little bit is okay, right? It's not always this big grand gesture of selflessness. It's not like you're just totally like putting yourself out there for someone and taking care of everything they need and whatever, right? You just got to release those expectations and selflessness that any sort of good you do for people and any sort of reaching out and any sort of putting of others and before you is a noble thing, and it's a very difficult thing to do. And when you do, it can make you feel a little bit better about yourself. And when someone extends selflessness onto you, that's a good feeling. And I think we all as people should be more into the mindset of giving a little bit of people respect, giving others respect, and sometimes helping others out of these darker situations when they can't do it themselves. Alrighty, friends. That's really all I have to say about that. Episode 33 done. I appreciate everybody for tuning in, stopping by and listening. If you want to listen to this episode, episode 33, as well as like any of my other episodes, I always post it on YouTube or Spotify. You can if you can always go check them out there. If you find it enjoyable or relatable in any way, then I appreciate a little support. You could subscribe to my podcast. Also, you can follow me on a bunch of different social medias. I have Facebook, I have Instagram, I have Twitter as well. I'll make sure to link all those in the description below, as well as on my YouTube channel, like description in my bio or whatever. But, nonetheless, I always appreciate the chance to get to talk to everybody. And I know that we're getting into the holiday season, and I hope everybody's going to have a good time this year and everybody has a strong start to 2024. But I love y'all. Thank you for stopping by. Make sure to show up for yourselves every single day and be excellent to each other.